Hi everyone, this is Unit 3 and the start of 3.04 Get a Job Too. To be a player in the economy, it helps to have a job. And because a good job opens new opportunities, sooner or later just about everyone will seek employment, whether for their first job or as a way to find a new and better job. To find a good job helps to understand the job market, and it is important to answer some vital questions. How much does a job pay? What kinds of skills are required to perform it? What kind of benefits does the job include? You will begin to examine the possible answers to these and other questions related to the job market. By the end of this lesson, you will understand the function of the job market and how the buying and selling of labor works. This knowledge will be useful anytime you look for a job. You have learned that the labor market is not an entirely free market. Workers often lack the flexibility to change jobs, and employers face various restrictions, such as minimum wage laws. At the same time, the size of the labor pool might be too big or too small within a particular field. All of these factors mean that the law of supply and demand is not the only influence over employment and wage levels within the job market. Organized labor unions also have a significant effect on labor market conditions. A labor union is a group of workers who have joined together to increase their power in the labor market. Alone, individual workers have traditionally found it difficult to convince employers to raise salaries and provide benefits. Organized as a group, however, workers have much more influence. Unions negotiate contracts with employers that set wage levels and offer benefits, securing agreements to benefit the workers as a whole. Unions perform other functions that affect the labor market as well. Organizing unions. In order to collect the money they need to operate, unions charge their members union dues. Unions perform services that workers purchase with dues. What makes workers willing to pay for these services? Workers, like all economic players, use cost-benefit analysis to make economic decisions. The willingness of millions of workers to pay union dues suggests that unions must provide benefits that outweigh the cost of the dues. The main benefits to workers are higher wages and better working conditions. For instance, think of a grocery store worker named Carol. She makes $12 an hour. One day, the store owner announces that they must cut every worker's pay by 25%. Now Carol only makes $9 an hour. This is a significant cut in pay, but what can she do? She might resign, but then she'd have no income at all. The store would simply replace her with someone willing to work for $9 an hour. Now imagine that every employee in the store got together and threatened to resign over the pay cut. The store owners would suddenly be faced with the prospects of hiring, training, and organizing a new staff. That might involve shutting down the store for a while, which would reduce revenue and cut into profits severely. The store owners might decide that it is better to negotiate with the current workers to keep them from quitting. By acting as a group, the workers have a lot of power. This is the idea behind unions. Collective bargaining. Unions gain benefits for their workers through the process of collective bargaining. This is the process by which employees, represented by their union or another group, negotiate with the employer about working conditions, salaries, benefits, and other matters. Without a union, workers engage in individual bargaining. This put the workers at a disadvantage. Individual workers usually need their jobs, and while employers need the workers, they generally don't need a specific individual worker. This gives employers an advantage in an individual bargaining situation. But when workers join together and agree to negotiate a contract with their employer in a united way, the employer faces a much stronger force. Collective bargaining gains workers power that makes them more equal to the employer. Unions use this power to get higher wages and better working conditions for their members. Industrial action. Collective bargaining allows workers to negotiate on a more equal level with employers. But what motivates employers to agree to collective bargaining? The incentive comes from workers' ability to slow or stop production through industrial action. One type of industrial action is called a strike. This is when all union members agree to stop working. Another kind of industrial action is a slowdown. In this case, instead of shutting down a business or factory, union members work less efficiently in order to reduce their productivity. A slowdown is designed to show employers how important it is to cooperate with workers. Employers are not helpless in the face of industrial actions organized by labor unions. Factory owners can respond to a strike by hiring strike breakers, sometimes called scabs by union members, to work in the place of striking union members. Employers can also respond to slowdowns with a lockout. In this case, the employer prevents workers from entering the workplace and stops paying them. The early years of organized labor included many showdowns between workers and factory owners that became violent. In May of 1886, a large crowd gathered in Chicago's Haymarket Square in support of workers who had gone on strike to demand an 8-hour workday. The crowd clashed with the police. When someone threw a bomb, the explosion killed 11 people, including 7 police officers, and injured more than 60 others. The Haymarket riot illustrates the tension between employers and workers during the early years of the labor movement in the United States. Between 1890 and 1920, dozens died and hundreds suffered injury in similar showdowns between workers and employers. Similar clashes occurred in the industrialized nations of Western Europe during the same period. Today, such incidents still occur with relative frequency in underdeveloped nations of Asia and Africa. Managing worker-employee conflict. Today in the United States, the government regulates both workers and employers to prevent such dangerous and deadly confrontations. In the United States, collective bargaining is governed by the National Labor Relations Act, or NLRA. This law passed by Congress in 1935 after a number of violent conflicts. The NLRA guarantees unions certain rights, and it sets forth the procedures for collective bargaining. The NLRA made it legal for workers to strike and prevented employers from firing employees for joining a union. The law also enabled the National Labor Review Board to investigate abuses by employers and to review the disputes between unions and employers. Farm workers, government employees, and certain other classes of employees are exempt from the NLRA, but these workers are often protected by similar state laws. An important set of amendments to the NLRA, the Taft-Hartley Act of 1947, served to curtail some of the powers of labor unions. It required unions to give 60-day notice of an impending strike, outlawed certain forms of industrial action, and regulated the activities of unions. The minimum wage. Beyond collective bargaining and industrial actions, unions have affected the labor market in other ways. Unions lobby the government to pass laws that are favorable for their members or for workers in general. The minimum wage is one example of union lobbying. This policy was championed by unions beginning in the 1890s. While collective bargaining can produce agreements about the wages paid to particular classes of workers, unions also supported legislation enforcing minimum wages for all workers. Today in the United States, the federal government sets the minimum wage, but states are allowed to legislate higher minimums. Set in 1933, the first minimum wage in the U.S. was 25 cents an hour. The minimum wage has been increased many times over the years to keep it current with inflations. Unemployment insurance. Another form of government aid to workers that was promoted by union organizers is unemployment insurance. All workers pay a percentage of their earnings into a central fund, and if they become unemployed, they apply for these unemployment insurance benefits. If they qualify, they get money to help them meet expenses as they look for a new job. Unemployment insurance helps workers survive difficult times. It helps unemployed workers buy food, pay bills, and meet other obligations during those times. Unemployment insurance has larger social benefits as well. It gives people the ability to look for a new job while out of work. It also helps prevent the spread of poverty during times of high unemployment. If unemployed workers were allowed to simply fall below the poverty line, it would ultimately cost the entire society much more than collecting unemployment insurance. Unions helping workers. There is little doubt that unions have improved the quality of life for many workers. In the late 19th century, working conditions in the United States were truly miserable for many workers. A huge influx of immigrants kept wages low, and rapid industrialization created living and working conditions that dehumanized workers. Workers had very little power to better their situations, and many employers fought to keep it that way. Unions helped implement laws limiting the number of hours in a day during which employees could be made to work. The limit was first set at 10 hours a day and then lowered to 8. Unions pushed for legislation that created the weekend by limiting the work week to 5 days. An uncertain future. Minimum wage and unemployment insurance often have complex effects on the economy. Collective bargaining for higher wages may also have had an unintended effect. Today, many employers in the United States have eliminated union jobs and created new jobs for workers in other countries. As a result, union membership has declined a great deal since its peak in the 1960s and 1970s. There are many theories about why union membership is declining. Fewer jobs are available in manufacturing, a sector where unions have traditionally been strong. The new economic trends of globalization have also weakened U.S. labor unions, as has an overall lack of interest in unions among young people. The role unions will play in the future of the U.S. economy is uncertain. Unions review. Unions are actively involved in their labor market. They work for higher pay, better working conditions, and laws that are favorable to workers. But their activities lead to distortions in the price of labor. To some people, those distortions are positive. To others, they are negative. Whichever position you take, the effect of labor unions on the economic system must be recognized. And then you can go ahead and do the activity there to check your understanding. Everybody knows that some jobs pay well and some do not, but what factors help explain this well-known fact? Two measures of wages are the poverty line and median income. But some jobs put people at or above the median income. This makes them better off than half the workers. Other jobs leave people in or near poverty. Then you will go ahead and complete the quiz. That is the end of 3.04 Get a Job 2. Please let me know if you have any questions or concerns.